Hare Krishna, we're studying Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 5, entitled Vidura's Talks with Maitreya. We're on text 14, 3.5.14. It's May 20th, 2023. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, text 14. Tan Shocha Shochan Abida Nushoche Hare Katayam Vimukan Aghena Shinoti Deva Animisha Tu Yesham Ayu Vrita Vada Gati Smritinam Shoche Shochan Abidonu Shoche Hare Katayam Vimukan Aghena Shinoti Devo Nimishastu Yesham Ayurvita Vada Gati Smritinam Anshocha Shochan Avinosh Nuchoche Hare Katayam Vimukan Hakena Shinoti Devo Nimishastu Yesham Ayurvita Vada Gati Smritinam Anchoche Shochan Avinonu Shoche Hare Katayam Vimukan Hakena Shinoti Devo Nimishastu Yesham Ayurvita Vada Gati Smritinam Anchoche Shochan Avidonu Shoche Hare Katayam Vimukan Hakena Shinoti Devo Nimishastu Yesham Ayurvita Vada Gati Smritinam. This is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 5, Text 14. Would anyone online like to recite the verse? Again, this is 3.5.14. Okay, so we'll go to the word meanings. Tan, all those. Shocha, pitiable. Shochan, of the pitiable. Avida, ignorant. Anushoche, I pity. Hare, of the Lord. Hatayam, to the topics of. Vimukan, averse. Aghena, because of sinful activities. Shinoti, decaying. Deva, the Lord. Animisha, eternal time. To, but. Yesham, of whom. Ayu, duration of life. Vrita, uselessly. Bada, philosophical speculations. Gati, ultimate goal. Smritinam, of those following different rituals. Translation. O sage, persons who because of their sinful activities are averse to the topics of transcendence and thus ignorant of the purpose of the Mahabharata Bhagavad Gita are pitied by the pitiable. I also pity them because I see how their duration of life is spoiled by eternal time while they involve themselves in presentations of philosophical speculation, theoretical ultimate goals of life, and different modes of ritual. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. If you joined us just recently, it's Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 5, Text 14. According to the modes of material nature, there are three kinds of relationships between human beings and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Those who are in the modes of ignorance and passion are averse to the existence of God, or else they formally accept the existence of God in the capacity of an order supplier. Above them are those who are in the mode of goodness. The second class of men believe the Supreme Brahman to be impersonal. They accept the cult of bhakti, in which hearing of Krishna Katha is the first item, as a means and not the end. Above them are those who are pure devotees. They are situated in the transcendental stage above the mode of material goodness. Such persons are decidedly convinced that the name, form, fame, qualities, etc. of the personality of Godhead are non-different from one another on the absolute plane. For them, hearing of the topics of Krishna is equal to meeting with him face to face. According to this class of men who are situated in pure devotional service to the Lord, the highest goal of human life is Purushartha, devotional service to the Lord, the real mission of life. The impersonalists, because they engage in mental speculation and have no faith in the personality of Godhead, have no business hearing the topics of Krishna. Such persons are pitiable for the first class pure devotees of the Lord. The pitiable impersonalists pity those who are influenced by the modes of ignorance and passion. But the pure devotees of the Lord take pity on them both, because both waste their most valuable time in the human form of life in false pursuits, sense enjoyment, and mental speculative presentations of different theories and goals of life. Omagyanatimirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshurvanmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svaya Mupakadamayam Darati Svapadanti Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttamparakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaragana Tanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagat Pate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindakadishware Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpata Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Viva Sari Gaura Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Nasta Prayeshva Vajreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevya Bhagavat Utamashloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Srimad Bhagavatam and by serving the pure devotee of the Bhagavat, all that is troublesome to the heart is practically completely destroyed, and loving transcendental service to the transcendental Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is glorified by the choicest Vedic verses, is irrevocably established in the heart. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim sarasvatim vyasam tato jamudira. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, to Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, to Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 5, Text 14, it's May 20th, 2023. Shoche shochana vinono shoche hare katayam vimukhan akena shinoti devo nimishastu yesham ayor vritavada gati smitinam. O sage, persons who because of their sinful activities are averse to the topics of transcendence, and thus ignorant of the purpose of the Mahabharata Bhagavad Gita, are pitied by the pitiable. I also pity them because I see how their duration of life is spoiled by eternal time, while they involve themselves in presentations of philosophical speculation, theoretical ultimate goals of life, and different modes of ritual. Hare Krishna. And there's a text earlier in Bhagavatam, Dharma Svanustita Pumsam Vishvaksena Katasya Notpadya Yadiratim Shrama Eva Kevalam. That all dharmas, all activities, all responsibilities, if one fulfills their responsibilities in any area, but that fulfillment of dharma does not inspire attraction for the messages. Dharma Svanustita Pumsam Vishvaksena Katasya for the kata. But for hearing and chanting about Vasudeva, Krishna, Vasudeva, Vasudeva, the son of Vasudeva, Sri Krishna, then it's a Shrama Eva Kevalam. It's completely, utterly a useless waste of time. So it points to the ultimate, the purpose of life. So it's described here that, yes, that I also, this is Vidura speaking, I also pity them because I see how their duration of life is spoiled by eternal time, while they involve themselves in presentations of philosophical speculation, theoretical ultimate goals of life, and different modes of ritual. There's a verse also in the second canto, Ayor Harati Vaipum Sam, and it describes about the sunrise, sunset, the sun rising and setting, and so through the sunrise and the sunset, that it takes away our life. The rise and set, it might be imperceptible, but whatever, even if someone lives a long life, okay, so 25,000 sunrise, sunset, it's all over. Takes away our life, the sunrise, the sunset. Except, says that verse, except for the devotee. Except for the devotee. Doesn't take away their life. Doesn't take away their life. Okay. So that relates to an analogy we really like to use from Srila Prabhupada. We use this a lot in our attempts to share Krishna consciousness. The jaws of the cat. The jaws of the cat represent death, and death's accompanying friends, old age and disease and rebirth. All right, and so And so then there's the experience of the cats of the experience of the jaws of the cat from the point of view of the rat or the mouse. We put ourselves, it's like completely terrifying, just being ripped apart viciously, death, destruction. Okay, but then the same jaws of the cat from the experience, the point of view of the kitten, the same jaws, but it's a very tender experience, warm, loving, sheltering, safe, secure, inspirational. Okay, so the rat or the mouse represents the sort of people, spirit souls having a human experience, who Vidura is pitying here, and Prabhupada, of course, expands on pitied by the pitiable, very heavy, expands on that in the purport. So basically, to the extent that we, a spirit soul having a human experience, to the extent that we live our life for that which is temporary, that sort of pleasure, satisfaction, happiness, so-called happiness. But there is happiness in ignorance. Like, yeah, my happiness, if I could just sleep 12 hours. There is happiness. If I just get like completely wasted. Oh yeah. So there's like happiness. It's not real happiness for the soul, but there's happiness in tamas. There's happiness in rajas. There's happiness in sattva, and then there's happiness in shuddha sattva, transcendence. And the shuddha sattvic happiness, that's the actual, that's like where the driver of the car is really satisfied, really getting the food that's nourishing for the soul. That's bhakti. So to the extent, so we're like the rat or the mouse in the jaws of the cat, to the extent that we live our life for that which has a beginning and an end. Yehi sam sparsha jaboka dukkha yonaya evate jantavanta quantena teshu ramate buddha. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, 5th chapter, a truly wise, enlightened person doesn't seek pleasure in the contact of the senses with the sense objects, whether that's the external senses or more internal, subtle material senses. My ego gets satisfied by being praised or something like that. And Krishna, why? Ajantivanta kantena teshu ramate buddha, because such pleasures have a beginning and an end. And to use another commonly used analogy by Srila Prabhupada, like a fish in water. If we take a fish out of water, it's going to flop and die, no matter what sort of house it does, no matter, even if its children get nicely educated at a nice university or whatever, it's going to flop and die. Right? So our water is eternity. Water is timeless pleasure. That sort of gratification, that sort of that doesn't have a beginning and end, that will never be annihilated by time. That's security. Otherwise, bayam dvitiya biniveshatasya, right? To the extent that we misidentify the eternal spirit self with a temporary body, either gross body or subtle body, right? Like Descartes said, "I think, therefore I am." He went through a whole process. He realized he's not the body, he's not the leg, he's not, okay. But apparently he didn't come to realization that he's not the mind. Okay, so that's more subtle, right? We're not the hardware and we're not the software either. We're the operator of the computer. So to the extent that we misidentify the eternal spirit self, who we actually are, with the temporary mind, material intellect, material false ego, material body, we will be in anxiety. We will be insecure. It's just like an inviolable law. But I believe it doesn't matter, right? To the extent that we don't get the ABCs of spiritual life, not just theoretically, but to the extent that we're not fully realized in who we are as not the body, as spiritual, we will be in anxiety, or fear. But fear means bayam dutiya bhiveshatasya. And then the kitten consciousness related to this verse, that's pure devotional service. It means steady devotional. Like realizing Jivara Supoi Krishna and Nischadas Krishna Ratadas Shakti Beta Prakai. I'm not the body, I'm spirit soul, I'm servant of Krishna. I'm like Krishna in the sense of Krishna is eternal and I'm eternal. Krishna is full of bliss, I'm full of bliss. Krishna is fully cognizant awareness, and I'm fully cognizant. So I'm like Krishna, but not exactly, just like the sun rays, or like the sun globe. The sun globe emits heat and light, just like each sun ray. But the sun rays are not exactly like the sun globe, like in quantity, right? And they're not completely different either. Certainly, we're not completely different qualitatively from Krishna. That's true. Okay, so basically, what these verses in Bhagavatam are saying is because the devotional soul, the soul who's realizing and acting on the realization that I'm a servant of Krishna, for the devotional soul, okay, so this old age, disease, impending death, whether it's tomorrow or in 80 years, the death of the body, of course we realize the body's already dead, but it appears alive because we're inside, just like the cars can appear alive because the driver's inside, but it's really made of dead stuff, rubber, metal, plastic. Okay, but so the idea is the realized devotee soul is just enthusiastically doing what they do in the liberated state. So the death, the old age, the disease, all the miseries of material existence, we could list them, all the miseries of material existence, including Janma, and Prabhupada emphasizes Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi Dukkha Dosha Darshana, right? The four pillar problems of material life of birth, death, old age, disease. But so much of life, especially as we go on in Kali Yuga, so much of life is dedicated to run away from the anxiety, the fear, the terror of those problems. And we think the problems are eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. How can I eat better? I need a nicer place for my mating and defending. We think those are the problems, but that's really an avoidance. We use that term a lot in psychology and coaching and facilitation. That's an avoidance. Not that we should neglect our eating, sleeping, mating, defending. Okay, surely, Kamasya Nandriya Pritya Labo Jivita Yavata Jivasi Tattva Jigasa Natayas Jaya Kamabi. Life's desire should never be directed towards sense gratification. One should aspire for a healthy life, self-preservation, because human life is meant for inquiry into the absolute truth. Nothing else should be the goal of one's work. So to preserve, take care of the eating, sleeping, mating, give it sufficient attention to keep body and soul together, to use a term Prabhupada uses a lot. But eating, sleeping, mating, defending, basically the blades of grass and the squirrels and the trees and the cats and the dogs, the tigers and lions, they're taking care of the eating, sleeping, mating, defending. So that's not that's basically an escape from the real problems, how to get free from birth, death, old age, and disease. So the devotional soul is doing what they're doing anyway in the liberated state. And then the different problems of life, they just become further impetus to I'm getting out of this place, got to get out of this place with bliss, right? Further this is like a fish out of water. I don't belong here, but it's not escapist. It's not just like a skull. I never fit in. And then it just becomes like an anti-society thing. No, but this is knowledge, actually knowledge, how to get out of the prison house of material existence. And that knowledge is, the ABCs, or we're not the body, we're spirit, soul. And then that's not enough. And Prabhupada goes there in the purport. It's just these one full page purport. We could do a month full of classes. There's so many points here, where to go. Okay, but so Prabhupada, that's not enough. It's nice, but then what does the soul do in realizing that it's a soul? That's bhakti. And if we don't get that, come back to the material state. So yene ravindaksha vimukti maninas trayasta bhavada vishuddha buddhaya ruya kutrena pram patanta no yado dandvita yushmadangraya. So that even if someone has some, or even a lot of realization, I'm not the body, I'm spirit, soul. But if due to some slight or not so slight envy of God, envy of Krishna, we don't enthusiastically take to devotional service, avishuddha buddhaya, then that impurity in the consciousness, because we're averse to serving Krishna, it'll bring us back down to try to serve the different leaves and twigs rather than serving the root, to use that metaphor from Bhagavatam Yata Tarurmanani Shechanena, right? It's serving the root, that means serving Krishna. Then all the leaves, twigs, and branches are, and leaves, twigs, and branches means all the species, all the races, all the nationalities, all the genders, like that. So the devotional soul is just like doing what we do anyway. Right? So like the devotional soul is like, yeah. So like what does the soul do in enlightenment? What the soul does in enlightenment is discuss Bhagavatam. That's what we're doing. What the soul does in enlightenment is chant the names of God, chant Hare Krishna. The reading was part of the purport. Prabhupada says, above them are those who are in the mode of goodness. The second class of men believe the supreme Brahman to be impersonal. They accept the cult of bhakti, in which hearing of Krishna Katha is the first item, as a means and not the end. Okay, very profound there. So in bhakti, the journey is the goal. The process is the goal. Yes, the process is the goal. The process is the goal. The medium is the message, right? We chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So the medium of sound vibration, and at the same time, every word from Srila Prabhupada, the Maha Mantra, every verse in Bhagavad Gita, it's the medium, but it's also Namo Chintamani Krishnas Chaitanya Rasa Vigara Purnashura Nichimukta Binadvan Nama Namino. Yes, and I just borrowed there from Marshall McLuhan. The medium is the message, but it applies here because every vibration from the pure devotee, from Srila Prabhupada, every vibration, it reveals truth, and simultaneously it's non-different from the truth it reveals. And that's why, whether we understand, well, I don't agree with it, whatever, just be exposed to the vibration. Of course, if to the extent we expose ourselves, the more humble and receptive we are, the more powerful the transformation will be, the cleansing of the heart. But it's not, it has that effect. It has that effect because it reveals truth, and it's non-different from the truth it reveals. Yes. So, yeah. So that's why there's no fear for the fully inspired devotional soul. Because death, with that death, this will be taken away. And with old age, I can't enjoy that anymore. But here comes this disease. And now, what about my savings account? What about people aren't going to be as attracted to me because this body is whatever, I was honored for a while, but now I'm being insulted. Because so the devotional soul, we're just like not seeking pleasure in that. There's going to be honor and dishonor. Machas, Parshas, Tukantia, Shitoshna, Sukadera, Agama, Painoni, Shastamsti, Chikshasvavarta. It's going to be happiness, distress, too hot, too cold, nice weather, honor, dishonor. Okay, that's going to happen, but that's not where we seek our pleasure to reduce the insult and increase the praise or something like that. No, that the bliss of the devotee is getting to serve Krishna through Krishna's pure devotee, Srila Prabhupada. And that's what it means to be unstoppable. Nothing can touch that. Savai Pumsam Bhavodar Yato Bhaktira Hokshaje I Tukya Pratiyataya Yatma Supratsidati. That all occupational engagements are meant to provoke. Savai Pumsam Yato Bhaktira Hokshaje are meant to provoke inspiration to serve at hope, the transcendental Lord, and such service to be completely satisfying must be unmotivated and uninterrupted. Hetu, and if all we want all I want is bhakti, devotional service. Like we have that simple childlike desire, that's all I want, then that's the most powerful force in the cosmos. There's nothing, no material obstacle can get in the way. Well, I really want to do devotional service, but of course, first I need to this and this, and first I need to get this in order. So that's illusion. That's mine. No, at any moment, we get to serve Prabhupada's mission. We get to serve Krishna, and that's the bliss of the devotee. Now, if we got other, Prabhupada said, Krishna consciousness, simple for the simple, complicated for the cricket. So if we got other agendas, okay, then stuff gets in the way. And so, right, so, and that's what the soul does after the death of the body. It serves Krishna through hearing and chanting. Hearing and chanting are the foundational principles. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema. Sajakabanoi Shravanadi Shuddhachite Karyavudai. Love of Krishna is eternally situated in the hearts of all living entities, and it's awakened by this hearing and chanting. There are other processes of devotional service. There's other processes, but the foundational processes are hearing and chanting. And so that verse by Lord Chaitanya spoken to Sri Sanatana Goswami, often quoted by Srila Prabhupada. The emphasis is this Krishna consciousness. It's not something externally imposed. It's not artificial. That's why even for everyone here, it's safe to say this. We look at this whole, let's call it the externals, the culture of Krishna consciousness, bhakti. It's like, we didn't. This is pretty foreign, quite foreign. We didn't grow up with this, any of us. But at the same time, how come it all seems like it's like coming home? This is like coming home, right? Because for the soul, that love of Krishna, it's in her heart, and it's like, oh, this is awakening that unstoppable bliss, awakening the unstoppable. So that's why there's no fear for a devotee. Whatever the material nature does, whatever this mean person, I get to serve Krishna. That's my happiness. You can't touch that. You can't touch that. So each verse here is inspiring us to come into that consciousness, and that's real security. Everything else is cheating. Everything else is cheating. Yeah. So it talks about, okay, the verse is talking about materialist, and it talks about, okay, above the materialist, there's impersonal conceptions. So in bhakti, the journey is the goal. I remember this was in my very early days in my career in Krishna consciousness, right? In this lifetime. This was I moved into the temple early in '84 in Ra'anana, outside of Tel Aviv, Israel, Haaretz Yisrael. And I remember, and we had the Saturday feast program, right? Sunday is a work day. So the Shabbat is Friday sunset to Saturday sunset. So the feast programs, I could call them bhakti programs, but somehow feast programs. I don't know, that's what, well, Prabhupada termed it Sunday love feast. So it's a Saturday love feast. Wonderful prasad. Actually, before I came to the Israel Yatra, a year or two before, the leader of the Israel Yatra was named. He's an American, and he has a sannyasi name now, but his name was Ayojapati Das, and he was a personal cook for Srila Prabhupada. So he trained the Israeli devotees in preparing the prasad, and I got the benefits of that. So I remember one of shortly after I joined, and some of you heard, after I joined, a few weeks later, I went home and had my whole kidnapping adventure, but this is later in '84, '85. And there was someone that was it was in the basement temple room in the Ra'anana Bhakti Yoga Ashram. And there was someone there, and I was just noticing, it was a young devotee at that time, Bhakti Dev still, but, remember he was a Russian immigrant. He had recently come, he's a middle-aged man. And it was kirtan. He was really he had this sort of real ecstasy in kirtan. He was really enjoying it. He was really enjoying and I was like, well, that's great. That's great. At the same time, there's something different. And I talked to him while we were taking prasad. and he was like, he did some other sort of meditation or yoga, and he could see he loved kirtan. At the same time, he definitely, his things was, yeah, like we can kind of like, we can do kirtan, as Prabhupada says here, as a means and not the end. Like his goal wasn't to glorify Krishna. His goal was to realize that he is Krishna, to realize that he's God. He said that directly. So like I like when experience, we hear some of these different mentalities, is to realize that he is God, and through kirtan we can realize that. So it's a very distasteful mentality for a devotee, but I'm just remembering that was like 40 years ago, but it was like that particular mentality. That's why he was into kirtan, to realize that he is God. He said that directly. So it's a distasteful mentality for a devotee. At the same time, if someone's participating, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Chaturvida bhajante mam jana sukritin arjuna artor jigyasa artati jnanecha bharatarshava. Krishna says, people approach me for different reasons, and for the most part in this world, not pure reasons. But he says, whoever approaches me, they're in the process of purification, and it's auspicious. Maybe we approach because there's like, life is terrible, and when I chant, I'm happy. I want to be relieved of suffering. It's not a very pure reason, but it's effective. We gradually get purified, and more we come towards simply wanting to serve Krishna's pure devotee, Srila Prabhupada, not to be relieved of my suffering, not to get more money or something like that. So the process works wherever we touch it. Yeah, maybe some of you have heard me share related to the ecstatic kirtanier who had desires to be God. Yeah, I was, some of you heard me share this. In 2002, I was participating as a participant in a seminar in San Diego, and it was very well, not at the same time as me, but Mother Malini also participated in that at a different time, and it was very well designed and very nice people. I got a lot of value from the seminar. But at one point in the seminar, well, they do a form of breath work. Anyhow, I was on the floor, and okay, and I was in my process. It was in my and I liked the people there, and I knew already that like kind of the philosophical spiritual foundations was of the facilitators and the staff was a sort of impersonal approach with some sort of Vedic origins, but they knew, like, I had my neck beads, and one day I even came to the seminar in dhoti and kurta and tilak and like that. So anyhow, I was in my process on the floor. The room's dark, and so it wasn't the facilitator. It was one. There were two facilitators, but it was like a staff. And the staff came to me, and said, David, just know that you are Krishna. So I knew she was well-meaning, but that really wasn't what I wanted to hear. That wasn't what I wanted to hear. Not helpful for me. And from her point of view, okay, yeah, Krishna is some sort of deity for David, some sort of divinity. So obviously the goal is to realize that you are the deity. I mean, obviously. So for a devotee, it's actually an abhorrent mentality. The devotee is, no, I'm servant. I want to realize myself. I'm servant of Krishna. I'm servant of Krishna. And that's why, okay, so, and to the extent that we're acting on that platform, I'm a servant of Krishna, then even the spiritual, it's described by Bilva Mangala Thakur, Muktir Swayam Kulitanjali Seva Tesman. Says that liberation means that impersonal liberation, which like all the yogis are going for, impersonal liberation, stands waiting at the at the doorstep of the devotee as a handmaid. How can I serve you? And that's a fact. And we talked about this fairly recently. We're absorbed in Bhagavatam discussion. We're chanting japa. That's beyond, it's liberated stage, and it's beyond the liberated stage. Ihayasya haridasya parmana manasagira nikila svapyavastasu jivan mukta sojyate. That this liberation, it's not like a be good now, die and go to heaven. No, we get to experience that here. We get to experience that in this body. How? By engaging in the processes of bhakti with Shravanam Kirtanam, hearing and chanting as the foundational processes. And we do that, then that's liberation from the material. What all. There's a verse in Brahma Samhita that says, Pantastukati satavatsara sampragamyo vayor tapi manasa muni pungavanam sopyastya prapadasimya vijintya tatve govinda mari pusham tamaham bhajami. Lord Rama says, like, the jnanis, the speculators, or the yogis, if they like practice their breath, practice their breathing exercise, and they do the neti and logical analysis, maybe after millions and millions of lifetimes, they'll come to realization of a ray emanating from the toenail of Krishna, maybe, if they're like really sincere. And the devotees, you might say, like, the devotees, like, well, we can take any from Srila Prabhupada or Prabhupada devotees, the simple cowherd boys and Nanda Maharaj and the gopis who aren't, they're not doing the yogic breath work. Liberation is like a drop in the unlimited ocean of the bliss of bhakti, like that. So Krishna says, Brahmano hi pratishtam. He says, I'm the basis of the impersonal Brahman. Am sarvasya prabhavam tasarvam pravartate. Krishna is the source of all material and spiritual energies, including the oneness. So that's like a main theme in this verse, the verse in purport. When someone comes to bhakti, it includes all the other spiritual realizations, including Brahman. So, okay, so we've covered a few points here. I think one further point that's clear in the purport, wouldn't feel right to not mention it. The impersonalists, because they engage in mental speculation and have no faith in the personality of Godhead, have no business hearing the topics of Krishna. Such persons are pitiable for the first-class pure devotees of the Lord. The pitiable impersonalists pity those who are influenced by the modes of ignorance and passion. But the pure devotees of the Lord take pity on them because both waste their most valuable time in the human form of life in false pursuits, sense enjoyment, and mental speculative presentations of different theories and goals of life. Right towards the start of let's say, the directly philosophical portion of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about pity or lamentation, using the same word here. The first line of the verse, Tachoche, Shocha, no Shoche, it's a pitiable. So Krishna says, 2.11, right? He says, Ashochanam Vashoshasam Pragavadam Spasasache Agatasum Stanon Shochanti Pandita. He says, Arjuna, you're lamenting for that which is not worthy of grief. You're lamenting for that is what's not worthy of grief, because you're lamenting for that which is temporary. It has a beginning and an end. So Vidura is lamenting here, and Prabhupada's lamenting here, and that's spiritual lamentation. It's really lamenting for squandering one's eternal opportunity in the human form of life. And it's not just indulging in some sort of grungy lamentation. I feel so bad for people, but it's lamentation. It's lamentation with knowledge and enthusiasm to give knowledge that will actually help people relieve them in the mood of Prahlad Maharaj, Naivod Vijay Paradarayaya Vaitaranyas, that will actually inspire people with knowledge how to get out of this lamentable prison house of material existence. So Prabhupada says, the impersonalists, because they engage in mental speculation and have no faith in the person of God, and have no business hearing the topics of Krishna. I'm reminded that right in the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that really, Arjuna, this is right towards the end of the Bhagavad Gita, really, Arjuna, this knowledge is for the devotees. This knowledge is for the devotees. It's not for those who are envious or not austere or not devotional. And then Krishna goes on, Ya idam paramam guyam man bhakteshvabhidashyati bhakti mai pram kritva mameveshasya samshaya. And he says, yes, so one who shares Bhagavad Gita, shares this liberating, transformational, transcendental knowledge with the devotees, naturally comes back to me. Nacha tasman manusheshu bhakti me priyakritama bhavitan nachame tasman anya priyataro bhuvi. And he says this is very key, because if we have some spark of desire to become dear to Krishna, Krishna says, share Bhagavad Gita, share this knowledge. There's no servant more dear to me than he who enthusiastically shares this. And Krishna says, nor will there ever be one more dear to me. So Prabhupada in his purports, he says, well, this can appear like a contradiction, because Krishna says, this is really for the devotees. And so one who shares it, and Prabhupada, because we look at like Prabhupada and what Prabhupada is guiding us to do, right? We're going on a Harinam Sankirtan. We're doing programs at our homes. We're doing programs, and we're not just inviting those who identify as devotees of Krishna. So Prabhupada is kind of like, yeah, well, this is the compassion of a devotee. And I mean, like an analogy is sort of like, okay, let's say there's a graduate class in university in graduate physics, okay? So actually, to get into the class, one needs to have a high school degree. One needs to have a first level degree in physics. One needs to have paid the tuition. There's different qualifications, right? In order to get into the class with that professor, there's some qualifications. Okay, so at the same time, picking the analogy, let's say an enthusiastic student who's like so excited about like physics, they might go here and there to like people have like, I'm not interested in like relativity or quantum mechanics, but like an enthusiastic student might like get them interested. So that's like Srila Prabhupada, there wasn't, like if you took marketing surveys in 1965 in American Europe, or there wouldn't be like, there's like a big demand for Srimad Bhagavatam. There's just like there wasn't, but like, so in one sense, like, oh, why? There's not devotees here, but Prabhupada saying, Nishchasita Krishna Prema Sajakapanoi Shravanai Shuddhachite Shravarayeda. He knows Krishna's desire. He knows Bhaktisiddhanta's desire. So Prabhupada is going to create interest, to create sparks of interest. Prabhupada saying, everyone's a lover of Krishna. Everyone's a devotee. So how can I awaken that spark of interest to get people interested in graduate physics like that? So, okay, I'll read the text again. Canto 3, Chapter 5, Text 14. Kanchocha shochan avinano shoche hare katayam vimukha nagena shinoti devo nimishastu yesham ayur vitavada gati smitinam. O sage, persons who because of their sinful activities are averse to the topics of transcendence and thus ignorant of the purpose of the Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, are pitied by the pitiable. I also pity them because I see how their duration of life is spoiled by eternal time while they involve themselves in presentations of philosophical speculation, theoretical ultimate goals of life, and different modes of ritual. Hare Krishna, thanks for your presence and attention. I welcome any comments or questions. Bhakti Oasis.
Hare Krishna, Dhira Govinda. Your class this morning had so many layers to it. I really appreciate all the different aspects that you touched on. One of them that sparked a question in me that I've been struggling with personally for quite some time now is when you said that we can really take shelter in Krishna consciousness because there is so much richness knowing that our personal relationship with Krishna is what matters. That is, and so when there's a mean person or there's somebody who doesn't resonate with us or we're rejected or they're disparaged, it's all in the service of Krishna. It makes it beautiful, and it can be we can be really strong and withstand that. So my question is, what if that person or persons is a devotee? Like, then what happens? Because there's so many examples of this. One that's coming to mind this morning for me is Yamuna Devidasi in her song that she recorded. And the way that I heard it told is that they did not want this played for Prabhupada. They were like, man, she really messed this up. She sang the verses out of order. And Prabhupada wanted to hear it anyway, and he loved it. And now it's greeting the deities every morning. He really installed that as something that we all participate in every day. But yet the devotees at the time really did not agree that this was the best way or the service that should be rendered. So there's naturally going to be disagreements. That's been my experience between devotees.
Sure.
They're not going to understand. They're not going to like each other. They're not going to understand the way that devotion is executed. There's going to be friction, and it's going to be present just in every human aspect of life. So then what to do? Because I feel a lot of personal fear and almost paralysis to not want to offend devotees. And yet I know pretty much every person who's ever done anything in service of Krishna has offended other devotees. Like it's the part of the process because people don't agree, like they're just not going to agree with each other all the time. So then what to do when people are like, no, you can't leave out, Tulasi Devi Puja, or how do we, what I'm saying? There needs to be like how to move forward if I want to take shelter of Krishna but I also don't want to offend devotees. So what does that look like? Hare Krishna.
Okay, thank you, Bhakti Danielle. There's a lot in your question, a lot of nuance and a lot of different distinctions. Okay, so let's so the principle that you're commenting on, the principle is if we have simple childlike sincerity to serve Krishna through Krishna's pure devotee Srila Prabhupada, nothing can get in the way, and that's the source of all bliss. That's what it means to be unstoppable. If we have other agendas, then we'll be interrupted because I'm not getting honored enough, so then I'll get distracted from my service, from my bhajan, from my chanting. But if we just want to serve Prabhupada, that's always available, no matter what calamity or catastrophe. Okay, so one thing is, different points of view doesn't mean offenses. Like, different, like, in one sense, that's what, like in these classes, we have the discussion part. And someone might say, yeah, well, here's my realization of that verse, that purport from Prabhupada. Someone said, well, my realization is this. So we can celebrate the differences. I don't mean that as a cliche, but like, that's the idea. Like we discuss and we're enriched by the different realizations and different perspectives. I didn't even consider that. And I'm not sure where I stand about that. Well, thanks for sharing, So different perspective doesn't mean offense. It doesn't mean offense. If we're trying to like out of envy stop another devotee's service, that's an offense. That's an offense. Okay. As far as, let's call it like less than conscious offenses, we're always doing them, okay? We're always doing less than conscious offenses. And there's a well-known verse, Apichet Suracho Bhajanti Mamanyani Bhaksarave Samantavya Samyag Vyava Sitoicha. He says, Krishna says, like, okay, like, Krishna is like, even he's easily forgiving. It's just like, whatever, like things we do, things we're thinking while I'm here in the temple room with Prabhupada and Krishna, and like, what's going on in my mind? Am I always facing the right way? No, because I'm not realizing Krishna's present, Prabhupada's present. So like, but now, like, if we're consciously doing offenses to Krishna's sincere devotees, even if from our perception they're not perfect and pure, if we're consciously, then that's problematic, and then our spiritual life is benefited if we kind of acknowledge that. We offer not just in a ritualistic way, but we're really remorseful, like that. So, and that's, this relates to Srila Prabhupada wants us to cooperate with his sincere followers. Srila Prabhupada wants us to cooperate with his sincere followers while cultivating our direct relationship with him, our direct relationship with him. So, in my various attempts at services over the decades, there's been sincere devotees who have disagreed with what I've written, or my attempts in so many services, including developing coach training and transformational seminars, my writings around Srila Prabhupada's full availability of the current link. So ultimately it's between us and Srila Prabhupada in the example you gave. So in the example you gave, so Yamuna Devi, she took shelter of Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, but Prabhupada asked her to leave the organization, right? And he said, no, you do your, it wasn't a very common sort of thing, but he said, no, you do your own thing. And then she was being criticized. She and her friend Dina Tarine Mataji, they were being criticized by some other sincere followers of Prabhupada who didn't quite understand how Prabhupada was guiding them. And then they came to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, ISKCON is wherever you're chanting Hare Krishna sincere. And like that. So if in the name of disagreement or even conflict with other followers of Prabhupada, if we're using that as an excuse to not enthusiastically share Krishna consciousness and practice our sadhana, which many have done, right, out of disagreement, and maybe people were wronged by others who are imperfect in their practice of devotional service. And then in some instances, they've left the practice of Krishna consciousness because of maybe justified resentment towards other aspiring devotees. So if someone leaves the practice of Krishna consciousness and leaves the enthusiastic preaching, sharing, there's no one to blame. That's just, and there's letters from Prabhupada, that's your nonsense. As maybe we were treated badly, maybe we think we were, but we're just not seeing our responsibility. There's all the interpersonal stuff, and we can look at my part and your part and all that. But if we leave the practice of the sadhana Prabhupada gave us, and if we leave the effort to share Krishna consciousness, there's nowhere to look other than in the mirror there. Just nowhere to look other than in the mirror there. And so it's our responsibility, to choose who we associate with. Prabhupada, there's devotees, bhakti yogis, and Prabhupada uses the term like-minded. So to choose who and no matter who we associate with, we'll probably find, there's still some conflict. We got our stuff. Prabhupada uses the term even amongst like the the gopis, they got their stuff going on. Of course, that's completely transcendental. We don't want to imitate that, but the idea is like, you know, we want to cooperate to serve Prabhupada's mission, and you know, all those principles, you know, to assert our stance and to look responsibly. How might I be source of this tension, like that. And then ultimately it's between us and Srila Prabhupada. What's my service? Again, like I don't want to be, I don't see myself as like a separatist, like so much of a rugged individualist that no, at the same time, yeah, I won't go into my history, but I've taken a stand in serving Srila Prabhupada where I'm quite sure Prabhupada, you know, wants me to do these services and write these papers and take a stand like that. Sure, I could do them more purely, but I'm sure the Prabhupada wants me to do the services, and I've been rejected and ostracized and vilified, and that's not just past tense. You could go on the internet now, it's present, like that. And so ultimately, you know, that's between me and Srila Prabhupada. What's my service? So I know, I hope I touched on some aspects of your question.
I appreciate your unvarnished reality so much. Thank you so much for your personal experience, and it's very uplifting and encouraging. I'm feeling some shift in this area, and I'm going to spend some time exploring it further. I want my spiritual seed to flourish without any cage of material disagreement blocking me. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Malini Prabhu.
I have a few comments. Do you want them all in once or in one at a time?
According to your inspiration.
Okay. Well, just for the sake of accuracy about Bhakti Daniel sharing, the story about Yamuna is, there is nothing wrong with the song we hear every day, Govinda Madhiposham. So I don't want, you know, like people spread so many things. And so we want to, every time we see something that's not accurate, I think it's important part of our service to bring it back. So there's nothing wrong. So no words, everything is complete, perfect. And for that song, the devotee were complaining because they were brahmacharis and sannyasis, and they were saying to Prabhupada, like, you know, we are brahmachari and sannyasi, or, you know, you're saying to stay away from women, that women are like fire and we are butter, and, you know, like we are listening to a woman chanting. And Prabhupada, you know, he just dismissed them completely. And if you're not capable of controlling your senses and going to, you know, cave in a mountain or something. And then there is another song where Yamuna have it wrong. It's Bhaja Ure Mana. She said Bhaja Mana Ure. And then the devotee, when she just had the recording done by George Harrison, they went to Prabhupada and said she's singing it wrong. And Prabhupada said she's singing with so much devotion. And in fact, like the recording happened because of George Harrison, that recording of the wrong words. She was after the official recording of the album, everybody left the studio. And then Yamuna, she was playing around thinking of Prabhupada. And she remembered from memory, because at that time they didn't have the songbook. She remembered hearing Srila Prabhupada at the Tittenhurst estate of John Lennon singing that song. So from memory, she sang it and she was like just absorbed with the harmonium and just her, and nobody was around. But George was around and he kept recording, and he recorded that, and that's how they put it on the album. And that's wrong. Yeah, she said, Bhajamana. And it's all wrong. So it's just for accuracy's sake.
Thanks for those details on that pastime. Hare Krishna.
And I just have a few comments. I noticed, like, when Vidura speak, he said, because of their sinful activities.
Yeah.
And it feels like so much the Paradukaduki that you were expressing at the end of this, your class, of this, the real compassion of the devotee. You know, he doesn't see the surface of what's happening. He see like, yeah, because of the soul's sinful activity, then some people are averse to topics of transcendental nature. So that's common. Like, it's like, you know, like understanding the deeper reason, and then through that, developing easy, like compassion. And for him, it doesn't develop, it's true for him. He sees that, he sees like, oh, wow, because they are being involved in sinful activity, they are averse to you. And then connected with that is interesting.
I'll just quickly interject. I appreciate your emphasis on that point. It relates to, yeah, we shared earlier, because it's one thing, we could be compassionate, it could be like sentimental, oh, they're suffering. But no, like, thanks for pointing that out, because like there, Vidura's, his compassion, his pralad, like Sukh Paradukaduki, at the same time, it's filled with knowledge. Like, you know, it's not just by accident, poor people are suffering. He has knowledge of what's at the root of that suffering. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, and you know, like sinful activity breeds sinful activity. It's like a downward spiral. So it's kind of a helplessness there too, like that. And then I found it interesting that Srila Prabhupada says the three type.
Yeah.
And first type, he merged together those who are averse to God and those who are doing business with God. And I found that interesting as the first part, you know, like usually we will separate the two, you know, like apart, you know, I don't remember that verse, all the mudas, Duskriti.
Yes, Namam Duskriti.
Yeah, and the fourth type of people, they're separated, but here they are merged in one. And
Yeah,
so,
Prabhupada chooses to lump them in for the purposes of this purport.
yes. And then the other point I wanted to make is the definition of the pure devotee that is very interesting. They are situated in the transcendental stage above the mode of material goodness. Such a person are decidedly convinced that the name, form, fame, quality, etc. of the personality of Godhead are non-different from one another on the absolute plane. So it's just like it's an interesting definition of pure devotees, that they're convinced, decidedly convinced of the absolute nature of God, and that there is no difference between the name, fame, form, and qualities of the Lord. And that's also an interesting definition of pure devotees. That's
Thanks
all.
for that. Yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah, they're decidedly convinced that the name, etc., of God are non-different from one another. Yeah. Thanks for highlighting that definition of pure devotee. Very wonderful. Thank you, Malini. Hare Krishna. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Thank you all for your enthusiasm for Krishna consciousness. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.